Jed, you wanted to talk about this. So we're talking about video games. You
Mm-hmm.
want to bring up this Hellblade 2 thing going on. I am completely clueless
Mm-hmm.
as to what's going on because this is outside my realm of interest in gaming. So I've seen tidbits,
Mm-hmm.
but you are completely dialed in on what's going on. So why don't you break down what's
Absolutely.
going on with Hellblade 2 on right now?
So this whole situation ties in a lot into what we talked about with exclusivity being console wars and even a direct connection to Stellar Blade specifically. People have been making connections between Hellblade and Stellar Blade, which it's all just a lot of cringe. But before I get into it, have either of you guys played the first game,
No,
Senua's Sacrifice?
no.
Okay. I'm not surprised because it is a very specific type of game. It's very atmospheric, story driven, character driven. You can basically describe it as a psychosis simulator.
Is this the
That's
one you were telling me about a couple weeks
Mhm.
ago?
Yes.
Okay,
So
okay,
I
okay.
only just played the first one for the first time a month ago when it was on sale in the lead up to this one. The naming of the first one was always terrible. It was Senua's Sacrifice Hellblade. Doesn't make sense. So they changed the sequel to be Hellblade 2 Senua's Saga. Still terrible, but in a completely different way. But I only just played the first one, and it is incredible. One of the most fulfilling gaming experiences I've had in a very long time. It is really just a psychosis simulator. Like they work so hard working with psychologists, working with people with psychosis, and then melding it with Norse mythology in this really fascinating way. Senua is a girl with psychosis, a Celtic woman in the first game who her boyfriend is killed by Vikings and goes to hell. So she goes on this spiritual quest to the Viking hell to try to resurrect her boyfriend, get him back from the goddess Hela. It's a beautiful game, 100% recommended to people if they like that type of game. But that's the problem: is this series is always going to be niche. It should never have been triple A. And
Mhm.
after this game came out in 2017, in 2020, Xbox bought the studio that made it and decided we're
Ooh.
going to franchise it. We're going to make it an Xbox exclusive. We're going to pour money into it. We're going to make sequels. And they're just not justified. The way the first one ends, you're undoing that ending if you have a sequel. There's nowhere for the story to go. And I actually just beat the second one last night, and they did not justify it.
Mhm.
The first one, spoiler alert, ends with her just coming to terms with her psychosis, not fighting it anymore, realizing I can still find a way to be happy. I don't need other people's validation. Like it's a really heartfelt ending. But then the second one's like, I'm gonna kill all the Viking slavers. And it's just so out of the blue. And it's about giants on this island that aren't actually giants. The second game is an absolute mess. There are thousands of ways to criticize the game. It's unjustified. There's the story's terrible. It was a mindless cash grab by
How much was
Xbox.
it? How much was it?
$50.
$50 for now, correct me wrong, for a 5-hour game?
That is if you're speed running it.
Okay,
Mine,
okay.
I took my time with it because, like I said, it is an atmospheric series. You
Uh-huh.
want to go slow, you want to hear everything. So I got mine up to 15 hours, but I'm definitely on the long end when it comes to
Mhm.
that. And being a few hours isn't necessarily bad. It's just they took 5 years to make a 5 hour game, and so there's that way to criticize it as well.
Yeah.
There are so many great ways to criticize this game, and I haven't seen anyone doing it for the right reasons. They're making it a a game piece in the Xbox PlayStation battle.
That's
All
what
the
I was gonna
PlayStation
say. It sounds like that's where you're going with this. They're making about the console wars bullshit.
to a certain extent, but they're also making it sound like it's woke in the dumbest ways possible. Because yes, this is a story game. It's not an action adventure game. Something I talk
Mhm.
about a lot, and Dre was talking about it as well. Variety is important in all these industries. We don't want every game on the market to be FPS just because they're popular. We want to have our RPGs. We want to have our MMOs. We want to have our Lego games. Like variety is important. So the majority of the criticism is coming from people who like, no, this isn't action adventure, therefore it's bad. But there's other things as well. So I have several things brought up here, but the first one I want to show you guys is the actress. So this is the main character on with the actress on the right. That is the actress playing Senua, and then the version on the left is the character model in game. That's pretty spot on. This is for the
Pretty
first game.
close. Yeah. The actual actress is more attractive than the game model. I would
I don't
say.
know. Her eyes are the biggest difference I can say. I don't know her.
What before you continue, what stage of the game is this? Is this alpha, beta? Where do we know?
Um,
Or?
this was for the first game, so I
Oh,
don't
for the
know.
first game. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was. All
Yeah,
right, go
but
ahead.
the second game is full release, like it's the final version
Okay,
out.
okay, okay.
So this is how the game came out, and the first one everyone was fine with it, but now they're saying
Yeah.
because the character now looks like this in the new engine. This is on par with Horizon Zero Dawn uglification with jaundice.
Not really. Not really.
I think that's insane, especially because
No.
people are comparing it to Stellar Blade. And that I have a massive issue with. These are completely two
Apples and
different-
oranges, dude.
Exactly. They're like, oh, what do you want, Western man? Big titty Japanese girl or ugly Celtic woman? And I'm just like, you can't compare these games. They're so incompatible.
Jed, you're going back to what I was just talking about. There's legitimate ways to talk about these things. There's legitimate ways to say this is wrong and this is bad. And then there's hyperbolic ranting. And you're describing hyperbolic ranting for the sake of pushing your team. And that's this.
There's been a
I
lot.
hate this
They're
shit.
like,
I
there's
really hate
no
this shit.
action in it. I prefer big action game. Therefore, story game in and of itself is bad. I've actually heard that for years. I've heard people say, if it has a story, therefore it bad. And I just wholly disagree with that. Like I said, variety is important. I don't personally like FPS games. I really don't give a shit about them. But that doesn't mean I don't want them to exist.
Yeah.
This reaction from these people has been incredibly immature. And I'll show one example. Learning the Law. I've never heard of this account, but he's the one who's really championing this campaign against Hellblade. And he's been doing all sorts of criticisms, like it's story heavy, not action heavy. Realism is bad. That's a big one he's pushing, is realism in gaming is bad. And here's one of his tweets here. The Coomer game ended up being a 23-hour masterpiece, achieving the best Metacritic score user rating. Not even journalists giving it a 6 because Eve is too hot and could stop.
First of all, he's full of shit. Try 58, 60 hours.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear a word y'all said.
Yeah, I know. Eve is glorious. Eve is glorious. No, Stellar Blade, if you play the whole game and do everything, it's over 50 hours.
Mm-hmm.
It's not 23 hours. That's bullshit. That's complete bullshit. That's a lie. He's already losing. He is already losing in credibility because he just lied, flat out.
And he says, meanwhile, the realistic, because that was a big marketing push for Hellblade 2, is they were really trying to go for realism. And he counteracted that by saying ugly women. He had this one shot, I couldn't find the tweet, but a shot of Senua from here looking up at her face. And of course, from that angle, everyone's going to look ugly. And he's like, see, ugly Western woman. He's being so disingenuous, but he's saying it's already DOA aesthetics 1. So realism versus aesthetics is what he's talking about, saying that Stellar Blade is the aesthetic game. You just cannot compare these two.
And also, technically, Stellar Blade is realism because that's an actual woman's body. Eve, the model, she's an actual Korean supermodel. Them boobs exist in the real world. Them boobs exist. They are attached to a beautiful woman who has the complete body. The face is an AI generated face based upon the creator's wife, who is also a pretty woman. So this is a real woman. This is as realism. This is as much realism as Hellblade 2.
Well, and he really ups the ante, but it's not the same image I was talking about. But he found a really bad screenshot of Hellblade compared to a sexy photo of Eve, and it's like, see, this is bad. Here's another example of it. That's a bad screenshot and a bad moment for her. She just got hit in the face by a giant. I'm not going to begrudge her for looking like crap.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't get what people are trying. I mean, what is the argument that people are trying to make? Are they saying that this is an uglification of the character for the sake of uglification, and they're trying to use like certain moments in the game to try to justify their argument?
Yes, that is one of the tracks they're going down.
But that's, I mean, okay. I'm not familiar with Hellblade, so I can't really speak to the experience. But if this character is supposed to be going through hardship and hard times and bleeding from her face for the majority of the game, she's not gonna be looking hot. I don't get it. I mean, like, okay, if you want to say like, what was it, the Lara Croft reboot that they did? I guess about like 8 years ago, whatever, the Tomb Raider games.
11 years ago.
11 years ago. God, we're getting old. So when they did that, and like even there were certain moments in the game, even though she was still classically attractive, like there's still moments in the game where she doesn't look hot because she's getting shot by arrows and
battle dress.
She gets jacked up quite a bit. Now, once again, like Jed, thank goodness you told me that was over a decade ago. And now we have all these new Unreal engines and all that stuff that actually show more grit and uh, more battle damage to people that they're going through stuff. And especially this game, I'm going to assume I don't know, but is this a survival game or?
It's really hard to classify. It's really its
Okay,
own thing. So it is very much story driven. Like there's not really much to do besides follow the story. Like if you want to
okay,
call it a walking simulator, you would have an argument for
okay,
that. There's still fighting in it, swordplay, but it is more about the story being inside this character's head with
got it.
psychosis. Like there's voices going on, there's hallucinations. Like it's very trippy.
Okay, okay. So that actually adds to it even more so. Then comparing these two genres, which are completely different games, and from what I understand, two completely different audiences,
Hmm.
then they're all wasting their time if they're trying to just say that, oh, they're making somebody ugly just for the sake of doing it, when it's not even attracting that type of crowd. Stellar Blade is attracting the young adult to adult male crowd. Period. Those that are into those action adventures from the late 90s, 2000s, God of War, all that great stuff. That's who that target demo was. This, as you said, Jed, feels niche. It feels like a niche group. Like, but there's nothing wrong with appealing to
Hmm.
that niche community. Like I'm a big RTS guy and turn-based strategy. I love XCOM. You know, I like XCOM. I like what was that? Marvel Midnight Suns. Like those games I can play over and over and over again for untold hours. Those the crowd that's being attracted to those type of games are not the same for either of these two games. So the idea that one size fits all does not work in the gaming sphere. It never has. It never will. So the idea that, oh, this is uglification, so we must, I guess, what, protest and ban it or whatever they want to say. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. It's just somebody trying to make a movement out of nothing. That's all.
It's disingenuous to make these
Yes.
arguments. It's complete disingenuous because, as you said, these are two separate things. What Jed has described is basically the equivalent of an e-novel where you're going through the story and you have moments of taking over the character, but you're eventually you're reading what's story. Stellar Blade is an open world. It was a partially open world action RPG where you have full control and it's designed to be a certain way. This is designed to to make you get pulled into a dark and gritty world, whereas
Hmm.
Eve is a essentially a bio android, and she is meant to do incredible over the top abilities and shit, not be on the ground having in your face fights with Vikings with axes. And at the same time, Jed, this game is not meant to be an action game. It's just meant to put because I've seen some complaints in my tertiary exploration of this. It's the action sequences are not complicated. It's basically hit the buttons to time for blocking and count and attacking,
Yes.
right?
The
Yeah.
the combat is so much worse than the second one though. Like the
Hmm.
first one, that would be the part of the game that I say is the worst. Like it's not terrible, but it's not as good as it could be. And then the second one, you can't fight more than one enemy at a time, and every fight goes the same way. You attack, it's X X X. You beat the bad guy. Something hits you, probably a person or an enemy, and then
Hmm.
you're knocked over. You roll, and then there's the next guy standing in front of you. That happens like 10 times per fight. But it's just totally different. Here's
But it
another one of
is
his tweets
different.
where he talks about
Yeah.
that's really all the fighting is just like this.
Yeah.
Oh,
Counter,
so it's like timing
counter.
parry.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
about it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
In
So
the
it's
previous
not
game,
great.
was the previous game like this, Jed?
No, the previous game. Well, I mean, it was still parry based, but it was so much better. Let me see if I can find
Well, I
a.
do that, and you're not wrong. Masquerade it is a Korean version of Near Automata, uh,
All right,
where it's a lot of cheat, a lot of that kind of stuff. You're not
and
wrong.
this is the first game. You have multiple enemies. It's a lot more dynamic, a lot more dodge based. Like this combat, I still really enjoy the combat of the first
This
game.
looks like better combat than the second game, honestly.
Absolutely.
This reminds
Again,
me of Star Fox Adventures.
the shield opponents are a bitch. Like sometimes they're harder than actual boss fights, and there aren't any boss fights in the second game. There's the giants, like I told you about, and I thought those would be boss fights. They're puzzles. Like the second giant you fight, he's in the water most of the time. And so what you have to do in the boss fight is time it for the waves he throws at you. Like you stand behind cover, he throws a wave at you, you run forward a little bit, hide as a wave comes. That's all it takes for boss fights. But this one, let's see if I can find a boss battle. There were some really great boss fights in this game.
I mean, this looks like a very base level God of War 2 type of thing. I mean, God of War 2018 type of thing.
It actually came out the year before.
Yeah. Well, but I'm saying that type of design. It looks like it's
Yeah.
that type of combat. Camera's really zoomed in.
Mhm.
It's a lot of block parry combo type stuff, and the enemies are going to be right in front of you like this.
Mhm.
And also the lighting is better here. The second one looked really dark.
It did. Yeah. No, I will tell people all the live long day. The sequel is crap. The first one is king, but criticize it for the right reasons. Like if you want to talk about this
Yeah.
combat being rough, that's fine. But this guy is saying this is more realistic because it's fun. Realism is fun.
No, this isn't.
Like I don't have anything against this clip that he showed. He's saying,
I don't even know what that is. I don't even know what the game that is right there. But it's apples and goddamn oranges, like I said 10 minutes ago.
yes.
These are two separate things meant to appeal to two different types of player bases. If you want super high octane adventure fighting adventure games like this, then this is what you're going to play. If you want something like Hellblade 2 or Hellblade 1, that's there for you. That's why the gaming industry has been successful for the past 40 years, because there's different genres. And unfortunately, there are some people that want to constantly drag it into, if I don't like it, then it's bad. I mean, you have to. I'll be fully honest. I have to constantly check myself if I see a game that everybody else is loving and I think looks like shit or is not my thing, to not start ramming, oh, fuck you for liking this. This game looks stupid.
Yeah.
No, I have to check myself because it's just not something that I care about. I could give perfect example. I couldn't care about Fortnite ever. But everybody wants to sit back and play it. But I will watch people play it, because not so much for the game they're playing, I'm watching for them and their stupidity while playing it, and for their breakdowns if things just go wrong. I could also not care about. I couldn't care about Helldivers 2 in that whole situation, but I watched some people I know play it because I wanted to see them having fun. But that's the beauty of gaming. That's the beauty of it. There are many
Something
different
for
things.
everyone.
Something for everybody.
And if you're coming into a sequel in a franchise and surprised that it's its own genre, you are entirely uneducated in the subject matter. So you have no right to be upset that Hellblade 2 isn't Stellar Blade if you have no idea that the first game wasn't Stellar Blade either. So just out of all this, we need to remember there is variety in gaming. Not everything is made for you, and that's okay. These people are acting in a very woke way, similar to what we were talking about with Stellar Blade. These people are acting like the same people who are like, oh, I don't want to play Eve in a sexy outfit. That means nobody can. It's very much selfish, self-centered, and narcissistic to think everything has to revolve away the way I like to play games. And we just need to remember, not everything's for you, and that's okay. That's good, in fact. Variety is important. I don't really care for the type of games that Adam was describing there. It's just not what's for me, and that's okay.
Yeah.
We don't always have to agree on the same type of game. So at the end of the day, criticize a bad game for the bad game, not for some weird way in your head that you've justified. It's not like something else. I feel like this whole situation, like I mentioned, coming into a sequel and being surprised it's not something else. It's like going to the best example I saw online was Jaws 2 and being surprised it was a horror film about sharks and not a action adventure Terminator 2 style film. You can criticize Jaws 2. Jaws 2 is terrible from what I've heard. There's plenty of things to criticize, but criticizing it because it's a horror film about sharks is just asinine. Yeah. It's asinine.
And Jed makes a point. He's not going to like the same thing I like, and because he makes it clear it's not my thing, I'm not going to bully him into playing Final Fantasy 14. And I'm not going to bully him into playing a game he doesn't want to play. Just like he's not going to bully me into playing a game I don't want to play. And That's fine. At the same time, it gets drawn into, as we mentioned earlier, the console war bullshit. The Sony bros, and I will say Sony bros derogatorily because the Sony bros suck as much as Xbox bros. They all suck because
PC Master Race, bro.
they suck too. Though they suck too. That shit sucks too. I hate all that shit because you motherfuckers weren't there for the real console wars. Dre was there. He knows what the real console wars were. Nintendo and Sega.
Let's go.
That was the real console wars where it was an actual war and competition, and there were strengths and weaknesses, and real blood was spilt in the trenches.
Oh,
Now I was neutral territory. I had both systems, but still, what they call the console wars now is bullshit. And all it is, back then, it was about the games. It was about the games back then. Trying to say my game is better because there were different games on the two different sides. Now it's about your game sucks, and it's not about because it's just saying it sucks because it's on your console. There's no actual criticism for why the game sucks. It's just, oh, look, I'm going to hype my game up. Oh, look, you hyped your game up. I'm going to hype my game up. Oh, look, your game sucks because it didn't do this. Your game sucks. It's just all to call each other names. It's all to call each other names. It's all to run it all down. And as just said, it doesn't help when the PC people come and go, PC Master Race, you could all suck my dick. That doesn't help either.
I know, but it's funny.
I know, but
doing it ironically, people.
But it's a good. But that's part of the joke, though. It doesn't help that they make it even worse because then the console guys go, "Fuck you! We don't ever got NPCs." It's like, leave us alone. This has nothing to do with you. But it's all ridiculous, and it ruins the discussion. I'm of the camp of just play your goddamn games.
Yeah,
just play your goddamn games and enjoy it. I don't care if it's on this thing or on that thing, or if it didn't do this, didn't do that. I will actively say, I will honestly say, during the period of time when it was Stellar Blade versus Spider-Man 2, both of them had a massive amount of flaws on both sides. And those of us like Jed played Stellar Blade, he can acknowledge his faults. I played Spider-Man 2. I can acknowledge its massive failures. And I can say it was not good because it ruined the franchise. The story was bad. The characters bad. Gameplay, 10 out of 10. Everything else bad. Everything else bad. I will never... I have it on my shelf, physical copy. I will never play it again. I played Spider-Man 1. I played that 3 times because it was so glorious. No, 2 times. Sorry, 2 times. Once for real, once for the Platinum. Once for the New Game Plus Platinum. That game was incredible. And then they ruined it. They ruined it with agenda. I could say that. Some Sony people can't. Some Xbox people can't about Xbox titles. They have to stay in their corners. It's as bad as ideology. They pick their team, they pick their tribe, and they will not be moved. And that is what disgusts me about it.